Prescription medications are good, and I would never advise anybody to discontinue the medications without the recommendation of their personal healthcare provider. However, there are threats to taking prescription drugs, and the more drugs you take, the more the threat is to you. So here I'm going to discuss 3 potential threats to anyone who takes prescription medications, okay? The first one is shortages. I was listening to a little report, watching a video or something, and somebody did a little analysis the other day, and they were talking about how some of these diabetes medications, there's a shortage. There's been a shortage of a particular diabetes medication which has become quite popular as a weight loss drug. So this is a medicine, and there's several brand names. One is Wegovy, and another one is Rybelsus, and then what's the other one? Ozempic. That's probably the commonest one, or maybe the most catchy name. But basically, these medications they were brought out for diabetics. They help people get their blood sugar down and bring their A1C levels down and things like that. But what they noticed was that these diabetics who started this medicine, they lost weight for the first time. They started losing weight. And so they were like, oh, wow, weight loss wonder drug, cash cow. And so, as usual, the pharmaceutical companies studied it some more, specifically looking at weight loss. And so there is approval of these medications specifically for weight loss in people who are not actually diabetic. Of course, there are different criteria that have to be met, but the bottom line is that people are being prescribed these medications for weight loss, and people are losing lots of weight. And this is to the point where actually celebrities are going crazy over this drug. And so because of this real significant popularity, people who are actually diabetic and need it to help their blood sugar, in some cases cannot get the medicine, they can't get it on time, etc., right? So that's just one example, but of course there have been other shortages where medications are concerned as well. Now, there could be shortages not just of medicines, but shortages of people who are able to prescribe these things. I'm not talking about the diabetes medicine, but there's some other medicines that have a very stringent criteria for prescription. And if there are not enough providers who are able to prescribe these medicines, then effectively there's a shortage because you can't get anybody to prescribe it for you, okay? So medication shortages are one of the real risks of taking prescription medications. Now you might say, well, hey, what can we do, right? I single out diabetes because type 2 diabetes specifically, we know is what is called a lifestyle disease, meaning that in many cases, not all, but in many cases, it is a disease that is preventable. Maybe all, but I'm not gonna make a blanket statement like that, okay? So, but generally speaking, it is largely preventable. I'm not talking about type 1 diabetes, but type 2 diabetes. And then also, if you do end up being diagnosed with it, in many cases, it can actually be put in remission. I'm not necessarily gonna say reversible, because if you reverse it, but then you get back to doing the same things that triggered it in the first place, getting back into that lifestyle that caused you to develop type 2 diabetes, then it's going to come right back. So I'm not going to say totally reversible, but you can put it in remission to the point where you do not need prescription medications, right? As I'm saying, I single out type 2 diabetes because it's something that you really have a lot of control over without medications. You might need medication in the beginning, right after diagnosis, when your numbers are dangerously high. You need medicines to bring the levels down. But if you can work on adopting the type of eating habits and lifestyle habits that are conducive to controlling your blood sugars, then you don't have to depend or be reliant on external factors such as medication availability, doctor availability, and so on, okay? Another threat to people who rely on prescription medications is the development of what we say illness, like having a sudden illness. One that comes to mind is like a simple gastroenteritis, or maybe even the flu, right? But some illness which causes you to not have an appetite, and even worse, to start having vomiting and even diarrhea. There are a lot of medications that if you get dehydrated, if you get to the point where you're dehydrated, but you're still taking the medicine, or you still have some amount of that medicine in your system since you last took the dose, now getting into a state where you're dehydrated and your kidneys aren't being perfused, or maybe other organs aren't being perfused, but especially the kidneys, then medications can build up, or their metabolites can build up and actually become poisonous, basically toxic to the body. And so I remember this case, I've seen so many cases like this, but I remember one more recent case of a sweet old lady. She was 70 something years old, just enjoying her grandchildren and just enjoying her old age in general, enjoying her retirement. And the poor lady, she was taking a lot of medicines for diabetes and high blood pressure and things like that. And she got a gastroenteritis where she got really dehydrated. But a lot of people, especially older people, because I know my grandmother used to be like that when she was, had to be taking medicines, and they're very religious about taking the medicine. And, at all costs, they have to take the medicine because the doctor said you have to take your medicine. And so even with vomiting and diarrhea, this poor lady continued to take all her medication and sadly ended up with damage to her kidneys to the point where she needed to be on dialysis. And she did sort of get better to an extent, but her kidney function never actually recovered. And so she remained on dialysis simply because she was taking quite a large amount of different prescription medications, and then she just ended up with this intercurrent illness, like a little with gastroenteritis, which really should be a relatively simple illness, but it's not so simple when you are on a lot of different medications which affect the functioning, the physiology, the general functioning of your body. So that is a potential threat. Again, I'm not saying to stop your medication. I'm not saying you should stop your medication if you get some kind of gastroenteritis. What I'm saying is that you should be aware and cautious of the fact that things can sort of go out of whack, and you should definitely notify your doctor or just go to the emergency room if you have some sort of sudden illness that you think might be interfering with the workings of your body and your body's ability to clear some of these medications that you're taking. Remember, you take medication, you take them in different doses, and sometimes doses are adjusted depending on your size or your age or just the degree of severity of your medical condition. And so thinking that, knowing or realizing that adjustments have to be made for those things, you can only imagine that if there is a change in the workings of your body, that again, the dose needs to be adjusted or it needs to be temporarily held. So just one of the threats, the second threat to taking prescription medications, or, lots, especially the more the medicine, the more the threat. And then the third and final one I'm going to talk about is drug interactions, medication interactions. So different medicines act on different aspects of the working of the body, okay? And so you might be doing okay on your regimen. Usually when I'm prescribing medicine, if I'm ever prescribing anything new, I always try to just plug it into an interaction checker, like there are different apps where we can check interactions, plug in all the medicines and check the interactions. And then I make a decision about whether or not I want this patient on the medicine, if I need to decrease doses of any of them, right? But the thing is, sometimes you have everything nicely laid out and then somebody gets a little, again, an intercurrent illness, a little illness or a little pain, a little headache, a little leg pain, whatever, and start taking pain medicines. That's the commonest one, especially those anti-inflammatories like Aleve and ibuprofen and so on. Those medicines can wreak some havoc depending on how much you take and what you're taking them with. And so drug interactions tend to be a big deal. One of the commonest complications is kidney problems, especially with those anti-inflammatory medications, right? They interact with some blood pressure medicines or other medicines that you might be taking and have this effect on the kidneys where you can actually go into kidney failure and again need to be on dialysis, which could end up being permanent. Other interactions also include negative effects on the liver. A lot of medicines, they are metabolized, so they're broken down by the body, but some of the metabolites or the end products of their breakdown are active in various ways and they might not be eliminated from the body immediately. So they can be circulating and causing damage, okay? And then sometimes for over-the-counter medicines, you think, oh, it's over-the-counter, it's safe. And so sometimes you might not be cautious about how much you're taking. And especially if you're having pain and you just keep taking, and then before you know it, you're in the hospital with kidney failure and the doctor is about to put a catheter in you to do dialysis on you, right? So I just wanted to sort of bring up these points just to sensitize you, make you aware, because a lot of times it's easy to just keep taking the medicines and not think about the potential threats, right, to all these medications. A lot of times you think, it's easy, I'll take, but then some people on 20 medicines, 25 medicines, 30 different prescription medications. And the more drugs, because they are drugs, the more chemicals, these things work on the function of the body. The more you take, the more the threat is, the higher, the greater the threat is to your overall function and overall well-being, and the more susceptible you are to simple things leading to major problems. So I hope you all found this video helpful. And I did speak about diabetes in the beginning. Should be a link below where you can click it to get on the wait list for my breakthrough habits for anyone with blood sugar problems masterclass I'm putting on. And just because we recognize that blood sugar problems account for a great percentage of the chronic diseases, and those in the top 10 causes of death on like CDC websites. Okay, so thanks for watching, and any questions or comments, let me know. Share this video if you found it helpful.